My daughter returned home in tears after receiving an invitation to a Christmas party at my in-laws. When I inquired about the cause of her distress, she silently handed me a gift-wrapped present, expressing her frustration. As I opened the present, I was shocked to find that it was not suitable for a child. Disturbed by this discovery, I promptly reported the incident to the police, urging them to identify the person responsible for this inappropriate gesture. The police investigation uncovered the wrongdoings of Ed, the sender, leading to a chaotic situation involving relatives. Ed faced severe consequences, and the situation spiraled into a punishment akin to the end of the world. In my 40s, working at the same company as my husband in his 30s, our relationship began with a shotgun wedding. Despite a challenging start, our third-grade daughter brought immense joy into our lives with her love for reading and kindness to others. While my relationship with my troublesome sister-in-law remained strained, I found solace in the supportive atmosphere with my in-laws. My sister-in-law, harboring resentment due to the age difference between me and my husband, often ridiculed me for having a shotgun wedding and mocked my physical appearance. Despite my efforts to ignore her, her hurtful comments lingered, making me feel inferior. However, when she revealed her own pregnancy and had a shotgun wedding, her visits became less frequent, and I finally found relief from her sarcasm. During my pregnancy, my husband's unwavering support helped me overcome the challenges. The birth of our daughter, though tough, became a source of shared joy and tears for both of us. Several months later, my sister-in-law had a baby boy and resumed her visits, driving an hour each way to make spiteful remarks. Moreover, the comparisons my sister-in-law made extended to our children. She boldly claimed that it was obvious a child born to an older mom would have a wrinkled face, contrasting it with my kid's supposedly smooth skin. I couldn't believe she would say such things, and I was left dumbfounded. At that point, I was too preoccupied with the challenges of new parenthood to pay much attention to her snide remarks. The real issue arose when she started visiting without any baby supplies, not even spare diapers or formula. Strangely, she would leave with a bunch of these necessities, including unopened formula, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I found her behavior baffling, coming to insult me and then taking things home. However, the visits abruptly stopped when my husband mentioned that her husband's job involved frequent transfers, and they had relocated to a different state. We enjoyed some peaceful times until our daughter started elementary school and discovered that her cousin, my sister-in-law's son, was also enrolled there. With our return due to my husband's job transfer, I realized my peace was over. Despite our strained relationship, my daughter and her cousin got along well. She, being bigger, sincere, and kind, took good care of him, while he was popular and surrounded by friends. In the 3rd grade, they ended up in the same class. One day, my daughter won an award for a reading reflection, causing a buzz within the family and relatives. During the visit to my in-laws, my sister-in-law expressed dissatisfaction, claiming the book was meant for her son, and my daughter had taken it unfairly. However, the truth was they had agreed to swap books after reading them and deciding together which book report to write. When my sister-in-law accused me of writing the reflection for my daughter, I explained the situation. Unbeknownst to me, she had been spreading rumors among the parents at school, suggesting I had connections with one of the judges and had asked for a favor in my daughter's writing competition. This deeply affected my daughter, leading her to stop reading her favorite books. Unable to tolerate the situation any longer, I decided to discuss everything with my in-laws. Before doing so, I confided in my husband for the first time, detailing his sister's actions since our marriage. My husband was furious, calling his sister's actions theft and deciding that we should share everything with his parents. Together, my husband and his parents confronted my sister-in-law at her house, surprising her with the unexpected visit. However, when my sister-in-law saw her beloved older brother, she was initially overjoyed. Unfortunately, her delight quickly turned to resentment as my husband gave her a harsh lecture about her actions. Accusing me of being a snitch, she called me an old hag acting like a tragic heroine and insisted that I take responsibility. Initially, I answered her calls, thinking she might be apologizing. However, instead of an apology, she used the calls to vent her grudges. Frustrated by her continuous mean-spirited comments, I eventually set her calls to go straight to voicemail and ignored them. Surprisingly, the calls stopped after about half a month, leading me to believe she had grown bored with my lack of response. Little did I know that this wasn't the case. In December, my in-laws organized a children's Christmas party, a first for them. While I wondered about the sudden decision, my daughter was excited to receive an invitation. Having cherished memories of a Christmas party at her kindergarten, she assumed elementary school would have one too. However, her school did not hold such events due to their stance on religious occasions. Disagreeing with the religious reasoning, I suggested having a family celebration at home. Last year, we had our own family celebration, and my daughter enjoyed exchanging gifts. The invitation for the party at my in-laws requested that we prepare a gift within a $20 budget. My daughter and I spent time choosing a present at a nearby shopping mall, opting for one of her favorite picture books. Excitedly holding the carefully selected present, my daughter headed to my in-laws' house, a mere 10-minute bus ride away. I informed my mother-in-law of her arrival, and everything seemed fine until 30 minutes later when the atmosphere changed unexpectedly. On a weekday, with my husband at work and me working from home, the front door opened abruptly, and I found my daughter sitting on the floor, crying. She handed me a gift-wrapped bag, insisting I would understand once I looked inside. The contents revealed a torn-up newspaper with my daughter's reading reflection printed on it, and a message card in red ink. The card conveyed a threatening message, suggesting that if we got too cocky, our family would end up like a torn stuffed animal within the bag. The maliciousness of the gift was evident, and it was clear that it was no innocent joke. Concerned and bewildered, I questioned my daughter about the meaning behind the disturbing present. She explained that my sister-in-law had prepared this special gift for her. The Christmas party was intended to be child-focused, and we had all agreed that adults should refrain from personally preparing gifts. This was the reason why I hadn't accompanied my daughter to the party. Yet my sister-in-law was present at my in-laws' house, and I hadn't been informed. This raised alarm bells, as my mother-in-law would have informed me if she knew my sister-in-law was there. I tried to address this issue with my sister-in-law, but she dismissed my concerns, claiming that only children with connections to missionary schools were allowed. Confused by this new revelation, my daughter asked what a missionary school was, leaving me at a loss for words. It was only in the spring that a relative had passed the entrance exam for a missionary school, making it a topic of conversation. My sister-in-law's son attended a missionary kindergarten, and there were stories of relatives realizing their connection to missionary schools only upon enrollment. In response to my daughter's confusion, my sister-in-law grabbed her hand and asserted that she hadn't called for her, stating that only children with ties to missionary schools were allowed. Frustrated and concerned for my daughter's well-being, I instructed her to stay inside and, clutching the unsettling gift, rushed to the police station alone. I argued that the gift constituted a serious threat, but the police suggested resolving the matter within the family. However, I insisted that threats could be valid even among family members or siblings. Not only were there threatening words, but also a threatening letter and a mutilated stuffed animal, which I argued was malicious. That's when a female police officer happened by, and she pointed out that threats and violence within a family are still reportable offenses. The female officer took over, empathizing with how scared my daughter and I must have been. After providing my sister-in-law's address, she promised to go and warn her right away. My wishes were fulfilled in the end, but I shuddered to think what might have happened if that officer hadn't passed by. It was disheartening to realize that some in the police still won't act unless it's an actual incident or accident. I wondered how I could protect my daughter in case of an emergency. That evening, when my husband returned from work, I told him everything that happened. He was furious with his sister for ruining our daughter's fun out of spite. He immediately called his parents to protest, as the Christmas party was happening at their house, and they supposedly didn't know anything about it. They claimed they had no idea my sister-in-law was there. They had left the back door unlocked, so she might have entered that way. My mother-in-law apologized for not paying attention to the comings and goings of people, as she was busy picking up other grandchildren nearby. My father-in-law had been away at work during the day. The Christmas party was mainly organized by the middle school-aged nephews and nieces, and my mother-in-law had mostly left it to them. Apparently, the police officer had firmly warned my sister-in-law later. From what I heard, she was told that any further reports could lead to more than just a warning, so things should be fine for the most part. However, my in-laws were distressed by my sister-in-law's actions, which had gone so far as to involve the police. It could potentially lead to criminal behavior. Consequently, they called a meeting with both our family and my sister-in-law's family, with the parents present for discussion. When we arrived at the desert at my in-laws' house, my sister-in-law and her husband hadn't shown up yet. They finally appeared right at the last minute, with my sister-in-law clearly sulking. It was obvious she wasn't remorseful and was resenting me for calling the police. Her husband, sitting next to her, looked clueless about why they were summoned. He seemed to have been called without being informed of the reason. During the discussion, he was shocked to hear for the first time about all the things his wife had done to our family. Unaware that things had gotten to this point, my sister-in-law's husband profusely apologized to us, feeling sorry. My in-laws, seeing his reaction, asked my sister-in-law if she had anything to say, but she just responded with, "Not really." She didn't seem to understand why she needed to apologize, acting as if she hadn't done anything wrong. "I didn't do anything bad. The police came but didn't arrest me, right? So that means I didn't do anything wrong." Everyone else was dumbfounded by her logic. It seemed like a waste of time just lecturing her. Then, out of the blue, my sister-in-law's husband declared he was divorcing her. We were all puzzled because it seemed like they had a good marriage. Responding to our surprised looks, he confessed he had reached his limit with her behavior. Since they got married, he hadn't complained about her not doing housework during pregnancy, and he hadn't scolded her for neglecting childcare and going out to have fun, thinking it was stress from being a new parent. But her carelessness with housework once led to a small fire that forced them to move. She, being vain, had insisted on their son attending a prestigious kindergarten when she heard other neighborhood kids were applying. But he didn't get in due to a lack of preparation. Embarrassed, she forced another move. While his job did involve transfers, they weren't as frequent as their moves suggested. He revealed that the frequent moves were not just because of his job transfers, but also to maintain my sister-in-law's image. After failing the kindergarten entrance exam, she tried to get him into an international kindergarten. When that didn't work out, they barely managed to get him into a missionary kindergarten. Choosing a public elementary school was only because their son wanted it, and my sister-in-law reluctantly agreed after her husband supported their son's wishes. He feared their son would be sacrificed for her vanity and had been considering divorce already. With her harassment coming to light, he felt he had no other choice but to announce it now. My sister-in-law, somewhat aware of her actions, didn't dispute what he said, but seemed taken aback by the divorce. "Wait, what do you mean divorce? You never showed any signs of this suddenly." She started apologizing to us, thinking it would help. "It was just a joke, right? Just a little prank. I never thought you'd take it seriously." A joke or a prank is something done among people who have trust. My daughter knows all about what you've done to me. How could she take it as a joke? Moreover, that hostile message was too much for a third grader. Even adults would be scared to go outside if someone threatened them. I told her that her husband criticized her, asking if she could say the same thing to her own child, and said her actions were unimaginable for a parent. Just because someone is a parent doesn't mean they have parental feelings. There are people who can't be real parents, and she is probably one of them. My husband, seeing her crying, told her sternly that crying wouldn't fix anything at her age and that she needed to stop thinking tears would get her out of trouble. She cried even more, insisting she did nothing wrong and wasn't to blame. Why am I the only one being blamed? Is everyone ganging up on me? It's all because my brother married an older woman. My brother's wife should be smart, beautiful, and so on. Our marriage and her harassment are totally separate issues, right? We already thought she was a bit off, but even my husband was astonished at her stupidity. No one tried to comfort the inconsolable sister-in-law. The discussion couldn't continue, so we decided to adjourn for the day. Her husband had to drag her to the car and take her home. Their divorce eventually happened, but it was a messy affair due to her stubborn refusal to agree. Her son's accidental revelation might have been a factor in her agreeing to the divorce. He, without any malicious intent, simply shared what he saw with his friends. However, the parents who heard the rumor did not remain silent. After winter break at school, my nephew talked about having a Christmas party with his older cousins. It seems that at school, they used a class to have a presentation about their winter break memories. Among stories about what they did on New Year's Day and video game consoles they received as Christmas gifts, we all exchanged presents. Then, I saw my mom giving my cousin a special present just for her, and I thought it was unfair. When the teacher asked what kind of present it was, my nephew described exactly what he saw. I saw it. The cute stuffed animal was all torn up with lots of red stuff on it, like blood. The story became a topic of discussion among the school teachers, and it escalated into a major issue after the children who heard it went home and told their parents. My daughter, with her heart still hurt, hasn't been able to go back to school since the Christmas party. Since everyone knew that my daughter and her cousin were related, they speculated that her absence was related to the incident. Of course, that was the case, but I wished it had remained unnoticed and left undisturbed. I had intended to wait until my daughter was ready to go to school on her own accord. Her cousin didn't share the story to be funny, but rather to find a way to stop his mom's terrible behavior. He, too, was pained by her actions. Learning this, her husband realized he couldn't delay the divorce any longer and agreed to her demands in exchange for her consent to the divorce. By then, she had become infamous in the neighborhood as the woman who threatened children, and no one would associate with her. She was even pelted with garbage when walking outside, and feeling cornered, agreed to the divorce, thinking returning to her parents' home would end her nightmare. Her husband had no intention of giving up custody, but she readily relinquished it. I'll remarry someone much better than you. Kids are a nuisance when remarrying, so I don't need him. She even said this in front of her son, but he stood up to her. I don't need a terrible mom like you. I have a cool dad, and that's enough. Never show your face to my cousin again. She left with a final retort. You'll regret this later. However, it was my sister-in-law who ended up in tears when she triumphantly returned to her parents' house. They turned her away at the gate, banning her from ever showing her face there again. With nowhere to go, she resorted to spending nights with random men in exchange for meals and a place to stay. When she couldn't find a man, she borrowed money from dangerous sources and spent her nights out, accumulating a massive debt. Her debts became so overwhelming that no amount of part-time work could cover them, and eventually she disappeared. My husband and his parents decided not to file a missing persons report, reasoning she's not a child anymore. They agreed it's better this way, not willing to take care of her if she returns. Since then, my daughter has been able to go back to school on her own. Her former brother-in-law didn't move, so her cousin still attends the same school. He now says it's his turn to protect her, and they have become closer than ever. This has led to a deeper friendship between us and my former brother-in-law, as our children have brought us together. My in-laws, calling both my daughter and their grandson their dear grandchildren, step in as guardians when he can't do due to work. With my sister-in-law gone, there's no more tension, and we have built a very trusting and reliable family relationship.